Michael and his wife are moving in with their 7 grandkids. You'll be sleeping in a 70-square-foot storage shed."
Robert said. I couldn't help but gape in shock.
"There's no fulfillment in doing housework and living with just another elderly person. Now you'll have plenty of chores and grandkids to take care for again."
It seemed he was treating me like a mere servant, but I had plans of my own. I packed my bags. "Grandma?" That was Lisa's voice, clear as a bell. I felt sorry for these kids getting dragged into this mess. "Just wait a little, okay?" I told Lisa and left the house. I was determined to create a happy environment for these kids. This was just a ceasefire. I resolved to work with Michael and fight to reclaim our happiness. I am Elizabeth, turning 72 this year. I married Robert and we were blessed with 2 children, our son Michael and our daughter Emily. I met Robert at work. After his persistent pursuit, we started dating and got married. However, my parents were strongly against the marriage. I left home in a whirlwind, almost like eloping. But after a while, Robert's gentlemanly behavior during our courtship days disappeared. He turned into a typical male chauvinist, expecting me, a woman, to naturally handle all household chores and care for him and the kids. He never once changed the kids' diapers. As the children grew, his mindset influenced them too. He spoiled Michael, our eldest, saying he could go to any university and do whatever he wanted. But for Emily, our daughter, he declared, education is useless for women, and denied her college education. Heartbroken, Emily gave up her dream of studying further. Without the permission to work, I had no savings. I apologized to Emily, but she said, "I know what Dad is like, and it's okay. I'll make it on my own." Years later, Emily studied in Canada and married a local. We rarely meet, but she has found happiness on her own terms, just as she promised. Even if the parents are flawed, the children can still grow up strong. I'm deeply grateful for that. Michael, after graduating from college, got a job at a local company. He seems busy, but seeing him work so diligently makes me feel proud of his growth. Years later, one day, my husband and I received a request to talk from Michael. He seemed serious. I wondered if he wanted to quit his job or if something was bothering him. However, what Michael said next was completely unexpected.
"I want to get married,"
he announced, a wonderful surprise indeed. But I hadn't sensed any signs of this. I never heard about him dating anyone. Curious, I asked, "Who is she?" Michael shared about her with a bit of shyness. I was concerned about Robert listening silently beside us. Would he impose the same archaic expectations about women and household chores on Michael's wasn't unthinkable, given how Robert always prized Michael. Though I had remained silent in the past, I was ready to confront Robert if it meant protecting my children's happiness. Fortunately, my worries proved unnecessary. Robert didn't interfere with Michael's marriage. Instead, he quietly observed their happiness. Michael's wife Karen turned out to be a wonderful woman, kind to us, and even engaging Robert in conversation, which he seemed to enjoy. Michael and I felt relieved seeing this. "You've found a great wife," I commented. Michael beamed, saying,
"I think so too."
Their happiness was evident. Soon, it took a more tangible form.
Karen is pregnant.
Michael informed us. Grandchildren followed, and before we knew it, Michael and Karen were blessed with 7 children, becoming a large family. Robert generously supported them, frequently giving money for education and living expenses.
I can't accept this much every time.
Michael would protest, but if Michael refused, Robert would give it to Karen. The frequency of this generosity concerned me. Robert, if you keep giving money like this, we'll run out of living expenses. We haven't done much for Emily, yet you give Karen money so often. Can't you think it over? However, Robert reacted more angrily than I expected. We didn't speak for about a month. The Michael family, sensing the tension, felt guilty.
Sorry for causing a fight.
Michael apologized. I don't blame Michael's family at all. But Michael said, I'll refrain from coming to the house for a while. I also asked him to do so until Robert calms down. Years later, after Robert retired and Michael's children grew up, our marriage was reduced to minimal conversation following that fight. Since then, Robert never gave money to Michael's family in my presence, but he apparently often went to their house to give Karen money. I guess it's his only joy in old age. Aware of this, I chose to turn a blind eye to avoid further arguments. However, one day, Robert suddenly suggested,
What about living with Michael's family? The grandkids are many, and eventually this house will go to Michael. It might be good for them to get used to this area now.
The idea wasn't bad, but would Michael's family agree? There are still young children in elementary school, and moving them isn't practical. Plus, our house, despite being larger, might not have enough rooms for everyone, potentially making it cramped with more people. I explained this and gently declined the cohabitation. I think Karen is a good person as Michael's wife, but that's partly because we maintain a distance. However, Robert didn't accept my view. One day he went out and returned with a lot of luggage, as if he'd taken a drastic measure.
I'm home,
he announced. Welcome back. What's with all the luggage? I asked, only to see Michael's family entering our house behind him. Michael wasn't there, but Karen and the grandkids, looking anxious with large bags, were. Hi, Elizabeth. We'll be in your care from today, Karen said cheerily. I was taken aback.
We're moving it with Michael and his 7 kids. I've decided you'll be sleeping in a 70-square-foot storage shed.
He said, entering the house with the luggage. Wait a minute. Didn't I say that's impossible? Does Michael even know about this? I asked.
Michael was at work, so I left him a letter. There's nothing impossible about a family living together. It's spring break now, so it's a good time,
Robert said with a smirk.
You also got a new room in the storage shed. Huh. There's no fulfillment in doing housework for just 2 old people, right? Now you'll have plenty of chores and grandkids to care for again.
He added, Such a thing.
Don't think your opinion will always prevail.
I stood there, dumbfounded. But what shocked me more than Robert's usual selfish behavior was Karen's reaction. I had always thought of her as a nice person, Michael's wife, but she just chuckled at my dismay. Looks like you'll be busy from now on, Elizabeth, she said. I bristled at her comment. Were they both treating me like a servant? I had my own plans. I left them there, buzzing with excitement, and silently went back to my room to pack my things.
What are you doing?
Robert asked. Since my opinion doesn't matter in this house, I'll be returning to my parents' home, I replied.
What?
Robert stood there, stunned. I vaguely heard him and Karen complaining, but it all sounded like noise to me. But just as I was about to leave the house, Grandma? I clearly heard Lisa's voice. The poor kids, caught up in all this. Just wait a little, I told Lisa and left. That night, I got a call from Michael, who had just returned from work.
Mom, are Karen and the kids with you? When I got home, I found a note saying they had moved to your place, but no one's home, and Karen isn't answering her phone.
He sounded panicked. I calmed him. They must be fine. Everyone's at the house, but I have left, so I don't know the current situation.
Huh?
I explained the situation in detail to Michael. I had refused to live together. However, to silence my objections, Robert brought everyone over without my consent, trying to force me into the shed and treat me like a servant. I couldn't stand it and left, but I was worried about the grandchildren. Surely, they too were brought over without having to understand the situation.
I'd refuse to live together too. The kids didn't want to change schools, and I've seen enough of Dad to know living together would burden you, Mom.
Michael said with a sigh.
I need to convince Karen to understand and bring everyone back home.
I nodded. I have an idea. Michael seemed interested. I shared my plan with him. You must be tired from work, but can you help me?
Of course,
he replied. Then I'll contact you again. Rest well for tonight. I informed Michael of this and ended the call. I set down my mobile phone and sighed. It looked like I was in for a busy time. As I pondered this, someone entered my room and spoke to me.
Do you think the plan will work?
Yes. Thank you for helping, Dad, I responded. The man smiled satisfactorily. He was my father, Joseph, a landlord of this area.
I told you not to marry that man. Now you're back at this age.
He chided. Well, you stopped saying that once Emily and Michael were born, I retorted, laughing together. I had left home almost like an elopement, due to their strong opposition to my marriage. But after my children were born, I understood the value of parents. By then, I had to come to understand my parents' feelings of not liking Robert. I had secretly returned home once to introduce my children to them. My dad, initially angry at my return, quickly softened at the sight of his grandchildren.
Come back whenever you're in trouble,
he had said. Though we weren't close with our relatives, parents are always parents. Robert didn't know, but my parents had paid for Emily's study abroad. He thought he had funded it, but he only contributed 30%. He was a fool to think that the little amount covered it all. I decided to rely on my parents for this matter and returned to their house. It felt shameful to depend on my elderly parents, but I was ready to do anything to protect my children and grandchildren. They understood my feelings. Dad had a simple solution.
Just kick them out.
And so began my counterattack based on Dad's strategy. The next morning, I went to the office to get divorce papers and returned home. Robert, seeing me return, smirked.
Did you spend the night outside? The shed would have been better.
I ignored him and looked towards the kitchen, hearing water running. I thought Karen might be cleaning, but it was my granddaughter, Lisa, a primary school student. Where's Karen? Why is Lisa cleaning up? I shouted at Robert in frustration.
Lisa is a girl. She should be able to do housework.
He responded nonchalantly. Angered by his words, I retorted, "Karen is the woman here, isn't she?" She must have noticed my voice. Lisa closed the faucet tightly and smiled at me with relief. "Welcome back, Grandma." "I'm back. Sorry. Where's Karen?" "Mom's still sleeping." I was surprised again. Sleeping? It was already past 9 a.m. "Did you make breakfast, Lisa?" "No, Sarah did before she went to club activities, but it's always like this. I'm in charge of cleaning up." "I see. Good job." Although I praised her, I was shocked. What had Karen been doing all this time? Making the kids do all the housework while she did nothing. These doubts began to surface. "Where's Karen sleeping? I'll go wake her up." I asked Robert. Suddenly he became flustered.
She's finally sleeping. It's cruel to wake her up. She's tired from being in a new house. Let her sleep today.
Had he ever shown such consideration for me? I did want him to be kind to Michael's wife, but this seemed like pampering, not kindness. Ignoring Robert, I climbed the stairs to the second floor. "Karen, where are you?" I called out loudly. Then I heard a noise from our bedroom. With a bad feeling, I hesitantly opened the door. Karen emerged with disheveled hair. "Ah, Elizabeth, welcome back." Was she sleeping here? With Robert? My expression must have revealed my doubts. Karen awkwardly explained. "I couldn't sleep in my bed, so after Dad woke up, I borrowed his bed." It felt like an excuse. I had sometimes thought they were too close, not just friendly. Maybe I was foolish for never doubting them. I decided not to present the divorce papers I had brought. I realized there was something else I needed to do first.
"So, what are you here for? Move your stuff to the shed."
Robert, who had followed me, said in panic. "No, I came back to move my things out of the house, not to the shed," I said, taking my clothes and leaving the house. Lisa looked anxious as I left, but I couldn't do anything for her now. "Lisa, I'll be back," I assured her, pained by her obedient nod. After leaving the house, I immediately contacted Michael. I knew it might shock him. It could be a misunderstanding, but I couldn't keep silent. Michael seemed shocked over the phone, falling silent. "It might be my misunderstanding, but if it's true, it's serious. We can't leave the kids in that house." Sarah, the eldest grandchild, is a middle school student. If she realized their relationship, it could deeply hurt her during these sensitive years.
"Okay, let's gather evidence."
Michael agreed. That night, after 11 p.m., I met up with Michael. He had contacted Karen. He told her to come home because it's far from work if she stays at her parents' house. But Karen refused. "Why doesn't Michael just commute from there? You can come home only on his days off." Karen and Robert must be thinking they'll have the night to themselves without Michael coming back. We contacted Sarah, the middle school student, and asked her to secretly open the house door for us. She complied, opening the door for us late at night while pretending to go to the bathroom. We entered the house and went into the shed Robert called my room. After everyone went to sleep past midnight, we heard footsteps from the living room to the bedroom upstairs. Michael and I looked at each other, waited for the bedroom door to close, and then quietly went upstairs. Standing outside the bedroom, we heard unmistakable sounds from inside. Staggering, I was supported by a pale-faced Michael. We decided and forcefully opened the bedroom door.
"What?"
"Wow! Karen and Robert, startled, hid under their blankets. Recording a video for evidence, Michael stood by as I said, "Do you realize what you're doing? Disgusting! Who should leave this house? Think about it." "Wait, it's not what it looks like," Karen protested from under the blankets. But Michael, with a cold expression, kept recording, saying nothing.
"Stop the video!"
Robert pleaded in panic, but Michael didn't respond, muttering,
"Divorce. I won't think of you as dad anymore."
His words were justified. I couldn't consider such people family anymore. Not wanting to wake the children with more noise, we decided that gathering evidence was enough for the night. Michael and I say to them, "Sorry to interrupt." "Continue, why don't you?" we said, leaving the bedroom. Michael sighed deeply, and all I could do was pat his back. The grandchildren were sound asleep in the living room. Neither of us could sleep, nor could we leave the kids and go back home. "You should go home and rest," I suggested, but Michael shook his head, watching the children sleep. The next day, I had Emily pick up the kids. She had hurried back from abroad after hearing from my father that I was kicked out. When she said she would take them to the amusement park, the kids were thrilled. It had been a while since Emily and the kids met, but she, being childless, adored her nephews and nieces, and they were attached to her, so they happily left with her. Left with just 4 of us in the house, we placed the divorce papers in front of Robert and Karen, demanding they sign. Karen began to sob, and Robert looked pale and frozen. "What are you doing? Write it quickly," I urged. Robert pleaded.
"I'm truly sorry. The shed thing was a joke, and yesterday I just got carried away."
His ramblings sounded like excuses, which I didn't want to hear.
"Who cares about getting carried away? You hit on your son's wife. Disgusting old man."
Michael spat.
"And you? Karen, write it now."
Karen burst into tears at his words. "I'm sorry. I really regret it. Let's go back home and live together again." But Michael's heart was unmoved. In fact, he laughed and said,
"Go back where? You don't have a home anymore."
Karen stopped crying and started trembling.
"The house will go back to Mom. It was originally her house,"
Michael declared. I smiled at his words. The house Michael had been living in was built on land my father had given to me as a wedding gift to Michael.
"I can't let Robert know I gave you the house. He may not be my favorite, but he's your dad. I did this on my own. No need to tell them," Dad had said. Michael and I kept it a secret to maintain Robert's dignity. Michael was grateful and had thanked Dad. "Sorry, I can only do this much for my grandchildren,"
Dad had said, embarrassed but clearly happy. Such a stark contrast to grandparents who exploit their grandkids. So, the land and the house were in my name. I then revealed another fact Robert didn't know. "By the way, the land this house is built on is also Dad's. I'm leaving, so either buy the land or return it as a vacant lot, okay?" I said cheerfully, and Robert turned even paler. This land was also given by Dad as a celebration of Michael and Emily's birth. Robert thought I had severed ties with my family, but in fact, Dad was the real owner. There's no way Robert, a stranger now, could use it without any relation. That's exactly what Dad meant.
"Elizabeth in a shed? Unthinkable. Take the land back. If they divorce, he has no reason to stay."
Acting on Dad's words, I initiated the divorce proceedings. "Taking away the house when you have kids to raise is too harsh. Are you still Dad?" Karen started yelling, but she seemed to be misunderstanding something.
"What are you talking about? The kids aren't going with you. I'll take custody."
Michael said.
What did you say?
You, making the kids do chores and disregarding their feelings won't get custody. They're old enough to have their say. We can take it to court if necessary.
Karen couldn't respond to his words and just looked down. Robert, still overwhelmed by despair, couldn't move. Seeing the two of them like that, Michael and I exchanged glances and smiled. It seemed they had taken quite a hit. Eventually, they signed the divorce papers and we successfully divorced with evidence of infidelity. Michael and I received compensation in the divorce settlements. We reclaimed the houses. Michael's house became a rental property, and my former home with Robert was demolished to become a coin parking lot. Karen returned to her parents' house, where her brother's family lived, likely feeling uncomfortable after her years of slacking. Robert, with his remaining retirement savings, rented an apartment, unbeknownst to him, also owned by us. It would be interesting to see how long he could afford the rent. The grandchildren, who had a great time at the amusement park, returned to my parents' house and slept soundly. With plenty of space, each child got their own room. Although it was out of their school district, they could still attend their original school with an application. They quickly grew fond of my parents, calling them great-grandma and great-grandpa. Our large family made my parents happy. Maybe it was for the best that Michael, the grandkids, and I all lived at my parents' house. Although the household chores increased for me, it wasn't difficult. Seeing the kids play and do their homework gave me strength, and everyone naturally helped out.
We hated being forced to do chores before, but if it helps, Grandma, we want to do it,
they said, which moved me to tears. Helping out should be voluntary, not forced. That's real education. I feel so happy now, buying donuts and sweets with my grandchildren, enjoying them with my parents. This life is a true blessing.